Otherwise, they'll, just pick up the random copy of whatnot off the shelf and be like, oh, yeah, cool. I'm just going to use this pre made campaign, even though they've got a lot of good ideas right up here. And then we're going to go on to, some other things you might see are some RPGs, do's and don'ts, whatnot like that. All right. So, jumping into this podcast, like I said, this one's going back to the basics. Now, for the basics, what I'm talking about is you're going to, start role playing. You're going to want to start a role playing game. What do you need to do to start? Where should you start? Exactly what you need. And then, I'm going to talk about a couple different RPGs that I know decently. There's one that I know really, really well. Some of you can probably already guess what that is. There's one that I've listened to hours and hours and hours of online, and then there's one that I'm still somewhat new with, but I've been testing it out, and I've created a character, and I'm thinking about doing a campaign, maybe right here on Critical Miss TV. Something check out later. All right. So, we're just going to jump right into things here. So, do you want to play a game? Do you? Do you really? I hope so, because this is the place to do it. Stream's a great place to get together with your friends that are all over the country, or sometimes in completely different countries, and, just have fun role playing, doing what you love, being a different person completely. Could be really fun. So, what is the first thing you need to do? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to pick a game. So, there are several RPGs out there, and I mean several. You type in RPGs in Google, and it just comes up with a giant list. And then you're sitting there scrolling through, and you gotta eventually find one that you like. And I'll be honest, some of them are vastly different than others, and some not so much. Anyways, you're gonna scroll through and you're gonna read some of those, and you're gonna find one that seems interesting. And then there is so much more available than just regular old Dungeons and Dragons. Trust me. Later on, like I said, I'll cover 3 RPGs that I am familiar with as a player, and GM, and or reader. All right, so you're going through, you find a game you like. Great. Now what do? Well, you're going to want to get a hold of a core book. What do I mean by core book? Well, all games will have at least one book that is considered a core book. A core book is a necessity for playing the game. You should definitely have access to all of the core books available for that game and have a familiarity with each of them. Obviously, knowing that the core book that you will use most often pretty well is always a good idea. So, a core book's going to be the rule book, it's going to be your base, it's going to be that player's handbook. Or, if you're the DM, it's going to be the Dungeon Master's Guide. Something to take a look at. Now, core books can be found in a variety of different places. Websites like Amazon will carry almost any core book you're looking for the most popular of RPGs. Bookstores like Barnes & Noble will have less of a selection, but are a good way to get your hands on a book immediately instead of waiting a couple days. Another option is to check your local library. Surprisingly enough, some libraries will have the core books to the most popular of RPGs sitting on a shelf waiting for you to check them out. Don't believe me? Go check it out for yourself. I just went to my public library the other day, stopped in, I checked the non-fiction adult section. Surprisingly enough, there's just about 6 Dungeons and Dragons books sitting on the shelf. Also, other places you can find these, you can find them online. So if you're dead set that you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, that's great. Check out dndbeyond.com. D&D Beyond has all of the books available, and if you purchase a book from them, you get access to everything 5th edition on the website, and you can create characters there, you can create campaigns there, you can do your own homebrew stuff there. It's great. Other places to check out, scribd.com. If you want to get a membership for that, that'd be great. You could do that. Otherwise, you might be able to just find a PDF. I definitely know Dungeon World has their own website that has their own book on it. And you can get like the hard copy and the PDF for like $30. It's great. All right, so what's the next step? Well, you gotta find some friends. It's the hardest part. Find some friends, you nerd. You need to find a few friends that have an interest in embarking on an adventure with you. Whether they have experience playing the game you picked or not doesn't really matter. Grab them, figure out your roles, who's going to be the game master, who's going to be the player characters, and start setting up times to get together, to build characters, and then eventually play a session. Now, for some of you, you're sitting there going, I just can't find friends. Friends are hard to find. I get it. Take a shower. I'm kidding. But no, really, you might need to take a shower. That might be part of the problem. If it's not, if you take a shower regularly, good job on having good hygiene. But if you need to take a shower, take one. However, there are places you can go to try to find people to play a game with. One place is you could find a local gaming store. Now, I have to start by saying this. GameStop is not a gaming store. It never has. It never will be. It is not a gaming store. So don't go there for tabletop gaming, period. They're not going to have what you want. They're not going to have the people you're looking for. And sometimes they're not even going to have the games you're looking for because of their weird selling tactics. Anyways, that's a rant. Now, a gaming store is going to be a place that specializes in trading card games like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon. They have role-playing games as well, and possibly even comic books. These places will have tables set up somewhere in the store for people who wish to sit down and play a couple games or hold an RPG session. These places are the perfect places to find people interested in playing an RPG. And since you had that shower, it's a great place to make some new friends. Other places to check besides a gaming store or our Facebook or similar social media sites. Type in your area in the search bar with D&D or RPG, and you may find a site that is perfect for a nerd like us on the hunt for some friends to roleplay with. Now, you found your friends. You've got your core book. Now, you need to play a game, and you need to get good and expand. So, you know what the game is. That means you're ready to sit down and play it. Congrats. Your level 1 fighter is off on an adventure, or that slightly smelly guy in the corner's level 1 fighter is off on an adventure that you control. Sweet. Have fun. That is the most important key to RPGs. They can be confusing, time-consuming, the bane of your existence sometimes, but they should always end up being fun. If you're not having fun, then you need to think about why you're not having fun. If you're running the game and you want to play, let your friends know that you want to switch things up and play a character, or vice versa. Say you're playing a character, but you want to take control because you have a ton of amazing ideas. Because, you thought, I'm going to take my characters to the edge of the world, and they're going to meet the most evil creature in existence who has been pulling the strings to their lives for what seems like years. Well, flesh out that idea and ask the current GM if they would switch with you. It's simple. They're friends. If they're not friends, maybe you shouldn't be playing with them or try to find some new ones to play with. Anyways, next, you've got to get good and expand. As with any game out there is a rookie period where you will suck. Sorry, it's a fact. When I first played D&D, I was terrible. I barely knew what to do, and my DM had to hold my hand for most of the difficult parts of the adventure. But don't give up. Eventually, you will begin to understand the game. You'll understand it so well that you barely need to refer to your core books to know exactly how much damage you're dealing to that werewolf while you are shooting at it with your weapon. As you play more and more, start to expand your comfortability a bit. Maybe you play one type of character, and you are really good at that one type of character. Try playing something different. For example, I am exceptionally good at characters that talk their way out of situations instead of fighting. Rogues and bards are by far my preferred classes in D&D, with rangers being the only combat class that I feel comfortable playing. As I grew in my understanding of D&D, I knew I would have to branch out to become a better DM, and I played some magic users, sorcerer and druid to be precise, and then dabbled in the realms of paladin and barbarian. A barbarian was the most difficult class for me to play because it is almost completely opposite of a rogue. They fly into combat without thinking, have no idea how to use grammar, and are certainly not classy in the slightest. Playing a character like that took a huge adjustment on my part, but it definitely made me a better D&D player and DM. So be prepared to try something different than your human fighter once you become more comfortable with the game. Other ways to expand are to get more gear. As an RPG player, I have a decent collection of dice. It is small in comparison to others, but it provides me with exactly what I need to play or DM. For some groups, they enjoy having something a little more hands-on than a character sheet and dice. Miniatures and grid boards are always a good addition to your game if you feel that you need to add a more visual element. They are very useful in combat situations to judge distances and give a better idea of how surrounded the party actually is when they walk into that goblin cave. Now, there are lots of different RPGs that like I said before, some may have more of a complete idea on what the characters can and cannot do, where others give massive amounts of freedom for the players/GM. There are 3 that I'm familiar with. Now, as a disclaimer, I have not played all of these, but I do have the core books for all of them, and have, at the very least, read through some or all of those core books. Now, for the first RPG that I want to talk about, Dungeon World. Now, Dungeon World is an RPG created by Sage LaTorra and Adam Koebel that takes the fantasy setting and pairs it with the Powered by the Apocalypse system designed by McGuey and Vincent Baker. The description supplied on the back of the cover of the core book states, combining high-action dungeon crawling with cutting-edge rules, Dungeon World is a role-playing game of fantasy adventure. You and your friends will explore a land of magic and danger in the roles of adventurers, searching for fame, gold, and glory. Dungeon World's rules are easy to learn and always drive the action forward in unexpected ways. A missed roll is never a dead end. Failure introduces new complexities and complications. Life as an adventurer is hard and dangerous, but it is never boring. Designed to be ready for you to hack, remix, and build new content, Dungeon World includes systems for changing everything to suit your group, including creating new races, classes, and monsters. To play, you will need the book, 3 to 5 players, some polyhedral dice, and 2 to 4 hours. Explore fantasy adventure role-playing in a whole new way with Dungeon World. Sounds fun, right? It is. Although Dungeon World looks as though it was made for medieval fantasy adventures, it can be used as a jumping-off point for a post-apocalyptic storyline where several factions are fighting one another for the minimal amounts of resources that are available. Anyone getting good ideas for adventures yet? Alright. Now, some of you may have heard Powered by the Apocalypse system and thought, what is that and how is that different from what we all know? Well, the Powered by the Apocalypse system is a style of playing where characters make a move from a list of available options for the game style. That move is then resolved using a 2d6 roll and any modifiers that come into effect. After that, characters are given a full success, partial success, or just a miss. To make that a little less confusing, allow me to paint a picture of how this would look in-game. So you've got a player. Let's call him Mitch. Mitch is playing Korvath, a half-orc fighter, and has fallen into a trap set for him and the party by a band of snow elf marauders. Mitch gets the first turn and says, seizing his moment, Korvath swings his mighty axe at the marauders, head that is closest to him with a war cry that bellows forth from his gut. The GM then tells Mitch, roll a hack and slash, which is the move used for fighting. Mitch rolls 2d6 and adds his modifier to receive a score of 7. The attack is a partial success. This means that Korvath deals damage to the Marauder, but the GM has a move against him. The rest may play out like this. Korvath's axe connects with the Marauder and separates his head from his body, but the swing sends Korvath off balance, and he trips over a rock on the ground, causing him to fall, just going splat. Korvath now must get up off the ground on his next turn, which will take his movement speed, and it leaves him vulnerable to attacks from other Marauders. So, Dungeon World, it's a good game. For most of you, it's a great starting off point. It's a really easy system to master. You can always find people playing it. There is a specific podcast that I listen to called Friends at the Table. They've got a great setup going on, and they use it a lot. It's definitely something to check out. However, the next game is going to take it up about 20 notches. All right? Dungeon World was about here. This next game is going to be like up here. All right? Difficulty's going to go skyrocketing. Vampire the Masquerade. So, maybe you're not a fan of medieval settings, and don't feel like doing a ton of work to create several new weapons, classes, races, etc., just to get out of that medieval setting. I get it. It's not for everyone. Maybe instead of dragons and elves, you like vampires and werewolves. Well, I've got an RPG for you. Vampire the Masquerade is a World of Darkness RPG that was designed by Mark Reinhagen and published by White Wolf Publishing in 1991. You become a vampire, a kindred, child, or newly bitten and under the thumb of your sire, and one of the 13 clans as you traverse the night in a major city around the world. Being anything from a Nosferatu, a grotesque, deformed vampire that live mainly in the sewers, to a Toreador, a vampire that lives for the pleasures that their unlife now has to offer them. You can take to the streets at night and create a story kindred around the world would live to be a part of. Vampire the Masquerade runs off the Storyteller system, which was designed by Mark Reinhagen and Tom Dowd to give Vampire the Masquerade a completely different feel than other RPGs, especially the big one at the time when this was published, Dungeons & Dragons. How this system works is characters have dots in skills and attributes on their character sheet. Each dot represents 1d10. The player making the roll counts up their dots and grabs the amount of dice needed to equal the total number of dots to create their dice pool. The player rolls their dice pool and records the number of successes and failures they receive. If the player receives no successes but no critical failures, the player does not succeed. If the player manages to roll a success, they succeed on the action. If the player rolls critical failures, which are 1s, without any successes, the player botches the roll. But reversely, if a player rolls an automatic success, which is a 10, they succeed without any problems. Finally, if the roll had both successes and critical failures, the crit fails counteract the successes, which can lead to a failed roll. Makes it a little more difficult, doesn't it? Well, to give you a better example, allow me to paint another picture. Howard, the storyteller, is describing a scene. As you step into the Excalibur nightclub off downtown Chicago's busy Dearborn Street, your senses are bombarded. The bumping of the bass and the DJ mixed music thumps in your ears and chest. The smell of sweat, perfume, and one guy's Old Spice body spray fills your nostrils along with the smell of mortals ripe for the feasting. The air tastes stale and somewhat grimy. The lights that are flashing and spinning on and around the dance floor leave spots across your vision as your eyes adjust to their brightness. Calvin, who is playing Lawrence, a Ventrue, says, "I wish to scan the dance floor looking for the rogue kindred we are tasked with capturing." Howard then replies, "Very well, that will require the attribute perception and ability alertness, difficulty 7. Calvin sees that Lawrence has 2 dots in perception and 1 dot in alertness, giving him a total of 3 dots, or 3d10s, to roll. He rolls a 7, 9, and 5, meaning he has 2 successes. Howard decides that he succeeds fairly well. You spot the Ravnos you're looking for in the exact center of the dance floor, surrounded by men that are looking to, at the very least, dance with her. If Calvin would have rolled a critical failure on the 7 instead, he would have been unsuccessful for the roll because the 1 would counteract the 9, leaving the 5 as a fail. It's a little more difficult, isn't it? Alright, moving on. We've got the Mac Daddy of all RPGs, Dungeons & Dragons. This is the game I am most familiar with, and one of my personal favorites. Dungeons & Dragons is an RPG that allows players to dive into medieval fantasy settings as a number of different races and classes, to delve into dungeons for treasure and fight against their foes, whether they be good or evil, to create a life for their character that consists of adventures and stories that bards will be singing for generations to come. Now, the original game of Dungeons & Dragons was developed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and published by Tactical Studies Rules Incorporated in 1974. Since then, the game has grown more and more popular, being bought by Wizards of the Coast in 97, because of it being the first game to allow the player to make a character instead of choosing a military formation in previous RPGs. As the years marched on, D&D remained popular by revising and re-releasing their game in different editions. The original game was split into 2 separate games. You've got Basic Dungeons & Dragons, and then you'd have Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or AD&D, and this happened in 1977. AD&D consisted of more structured rules for more advanced players, where Basic was a rules-light system. Following the split, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons got a second edition, and that was released in 1989 to supply a better game for players to use. 11 years later, in 2000, D&D 3rd edition was released with a new system, but was revised into the highly popular, and my personal favorite, edition, D&D 3.5 in 2003. Not long after that, D&D 4th edition, which is it's been considered the worst D&D revision of all time, but it was released in 2008. However, finally, in 2014, D&D 5th edition came out, which is currently the most popular version for RPG players because of its easy access, exceptional character building, and overall simplicity compared to 3.5. Now, the current 5e system uses a D20 system, which was developed and released with the 3rd edition by Jonathan Tweet and Monty Cook and Skip Williams. Now, this system is the most recognizable system in RPGs today because of its wide usage in other games besides D&D. Players in D&D need at least one set of polyhedral dice at the disposal, which consists of a D4, which is this nice little pyramid, a D6, which is your normal dice, a D8, which looks like this. You've got 2 D10. One of them will have regular numbers on it, 0 through 9, 0 representing 10. And the other one will have 10s on it, so you're looking at 00 through 90. And those are used to roll percentiles. And you'll have a D12, which looks like this. And finally, you have the one, the D20. Now, the D20 is the most heavily used dice in this system. Players will roll it for any action or move that the DM believes requires a roll. The player's roll is in direct opposition of a DC, or difficulty challenge. If the roll plus any modifiers exceeds the DC, the player is successful, whereas if the roll doesn't exceed the DC, they fail. 20s and 1s are highly important as well. If a natural 20 is rolled, the action is considered to be an automatic success. but a natural 1 is considered a critical failure or critical miss. That's right. I found a way to sneak the channel name into the broadcast. Booyah. Anyways, this means the roll is an automatic failure and could result in much worse happening than just a normal fail. The other dice in the system are used as damage dice or anything else the DM desires. For example, in the current campaign of Planar Jumpers that airs on Wednesday nights on this channel, I have the players roll a d10 to decide who will give a recap at the start of the broadcast to remind watchers what happened last time. Also, off air, I have the players each roll a d6, and I take the average to help decide which plane they will traverse to next. Different DMs will use the dice in different ways. All right. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the chat. Does anyone have any questions, comics, snide remarks besides no one likes Mitch? Apparently, Mitch is the bitch. All right, so we're gonna keep moving right along here since I'm not seeing any questions pop up. Oh, there's one. How do you build a character? All right, we're getting started. So, how to build a character? Let's see here. You know what? We'll just stick with D&D Make it easy. It's the one I know the best out of all of them. So, transition here real quick. All right, so making a character in D&D. Some people find it fairly simple. Now that I've played a ton, find it really, really easy. So what you're going to need, and this is my own personal style as a DM, but you're going to need 4 D6. Now, these I bought from Hard Rock Hotel because they were big, they were awesome, and they were retired. So, you're going to take them, and you're going to roll them. So, what you're going to do with this roll is you're going to record it. You always want to record whatever you roll. And this is where you're just going to start out. Let me get to a new page here so I can record these rules, because I'll build a character right here, right now with you. All right, so you need 6 rolls. These are your attributes, your abilities, your stats. They're going to be strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. So, for this first roll, I got a 6, a 4, a 3, and a 2. Now, as a DM, what I have my players do is I have them drop their lowest dice. So, I'm going to drop that 2. Don't need that 2. If they roll any 1s, automatic reroll all the 1s. Doesn't matter if it's the 4th die or not. Still rerolling the 1s. So, that gives me a total of 13. Not a bad stat. Continue on here. Rerolling. Oh, rolled a 1. All right. So for this one, I've got 6, 5, 3, and 2. Dropping the 2 again. So I've got 14. Ooh, this is a good one. 6, 6, 4, 2. Drop the 2. Leaves me with 16. Getting even better. I got a 6, 5, 6, 2. So we've got 17. And for the 5th roll, dropping a 3. So I got 5, 4, and 4. 13. And for the final roll, I got a 5, 5, 5, and 2. Gives me a 15. Now, also being a nice DM, I let the player take their lowest stat, which right now would be a 13, and I'll let them re-roll that. And they keep the higher of the 2. So on this roll, I got a 6, 4, 4, 2, which is going to leave me with a 14. So I got a little bit better. So get rid of one of those 13s. And make it a 14. Perfect. All right, so now you've got some of the most important part to making a character. Now, just so I stay on the right track, let me pull up my character sheets that I use for 5th edition. So these can be, there are several different types of, character sheets. I like to use just the basic form. On mine, which just makes it a little bit easier for me to read as a DM. All right, give me 1 second here. I'm going to add it in so you can all see it. Let's see here. All right. Now, transition here for you. All right, so I've got my character sheet right here, ready to go. So, as I said before, you've got your stats right over here: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, and wisdom. That's what you're going to use to, figure out what can your character actually do. Now, average human, you're looking at 10s all the way down the board. We're not that great at all. We're all just kind of fuddy-duddies. Now, got to pull up my core book here. Core books are important. All right, and so there's my core book. I have a digital copy because it makes it easier to use it anywhere and everywhere that I am. This is the 5th edition handbook. You can find it just about anywhere that sells books nowadays because it is the current edition. So, next, we've got to figure out what kind of character do we want to make. Jumping through here, we've got a couple different options. Let me zoom in on them. So, you can look at chapter 1 if you want. I don't necessarily need to look at chapter 1 because, like I said, I've been playing D&D for almost 15 years. Wow, that makes me feel old, dating myself a little bit. All right. So, in your core book, you have a couple different races to pick from. You've got dwarf, elf, halfling, human, dragonborn, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, and a tiefling. Then you can move on to your classes: barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, sorcerer, warlock, and wizard. These choices have actually grown since 3.5, which in the core book you didn't get tiefling or dragonborn, and you didn't have access to warlock in the classes. So, I think I'm just going to stick with an oldie but a goodie. And I'm going to do an elf ranger, one of my favorite things to build. So, we need to go to page 21, which this version is slightly off. And here we go. Get the beautiful picture of the elf. And RPGs, they do a great job of entertaining the reader or the player with great quotes, amazing pictures. Some of the art in these are spectacular. So when you pick them up, definitely read these, especially when you get into books that or games that are very different, such as Vampire the Masquerade. The cover of the book that I showed you was actually the 20th edition, 20th anniversary edition. Currently, they're out with the 5th edition, but I haven't touched that, so I didn't want to post it up there and talk about it. And I didn't take a look at the revised edition, which is the other book that I have access to. However, in the revised edition, there's like 13 pages of stuff before you even get to the introduction. And it's all just story, and it's amazing, and it's well written. All right. So, taking a look at this, we've got, it's going to tell you they live in hidden woodland realms, which is cool. If they're exploring or on an adventure, you can read about that. Elf names. You don't want to think of one. There's a couple right here for you, and they're great names to pick from. Now, it has things like, this is what elves think about other people. That's great. Whoopee-doo. Let's just keep moving. All right. And here's the part that gets important. Elf traits. Now, elves automatically get ability score increase of their dexterity. And playing a ranger, you're going to want to have a high dexterity because almost all of your attacks are going to be based off your ranged ability. So, the ranged attacks are quantified off of dexterity. That means, switching back to our character sheet here, I need to think about having my highest stat in dexterity. The highest roll that I had, if you remember, was a 17. So I'm going to fill that in there. Pops up a 17 there, but I forgot I get a +2 automatically. So that goes straight to a 19. Hopping back over here. Gives you age. That way, character details, you can kind of figure out, oh yeah, my elf is, 137 years old and has been wandering the world for only 5 years. That's great. That means for 132 years they lived in the woods and have no idea what, humans are unless they've ran into them in the woods. Another important thing, alignment. Taking a look at alignment, elves love freedom, variety, and self-expression, so they lean strongly toward the gentler aspects of chaos. They value and protect others' freedoms as well as their own, and they are more often good than not. The Drow are an exception. Their exile into the Underdark has made them vicious and dangerous. Drow are more often evil than not. Drow, as some of you know, are the dark elves in society. No one likes them. They don't like anyone. All fine and dandy. They can stay underground. That means we need to pick our alignment. Scrolling back up here to the top, gives us alignment right here. Now, I'm thinking about my character and what my character would do in certain situations. To figure that out, whenever I build a character, I think, what would my character do if they came across a woman searching for her child in a crowd? Would they stop to help? Would they steal her purse? Would they say they're going to help and then just walk away because they don't have time for her? This character, he would help, but he would help in his own little way. Now, that would make this character more good. Looking at the alignment type stuff, you've got lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil, neutral good, neutral neutral, neutral evil, chaotic good, chaotic neutral, chaotic evil. If anyone ever asks you if they can play a true neutral character, tell them no, because if they were playing a true neutral character, they wouldn't be playing. Just had to get that out there. All right. So, looking at this character, he's going to be good. Or she's going to be good. I haven't decided whether man or a woman, but definitely good. Thinking about chaos versus lawful, my character not going to follow the rules set out by, Joe Schmo lawmaker. Gonna kind of do things his own way. Gonna be able to, go outside the law a little bit. Maybe a little B&E, Maybe a smash and grab on someone's face because, they got in the way and they're the bad guy. So, I'm leaning more chaotic good. If I could type. Chaotic God. Yep, that's what I am. These can be abbreviated if you wish. If you don't want to type all that out, you can always just abbreviate to the first 2 letters. Call it good. So, this character is going to be chaotic good. Now, what's next? You may be wondering. I am too. Size. Elves are medium. Put it in your sheet. It does come into factor when thinking of weapons, armor, and things of that nature, whether they can fit in certain areas, whether they can't fit in certain areas. If they are small or tiny, their armor class is vastly different. If they are large, or if they're big or larger, Their armor class is definitely different. Their weapon damage is different, as well as the tiny ones. So medium is important. And elves range from around 5 to over 6 feet tall. Kind of helps you develop your character's physical presence. Is your character going to be super tall, which makes them seem a little more commanding, even though they are just completely and utterly, unable to lead anything, anyone? Something to think about. Speed. This comes into play when you're battling, when you're in a fight, or when you're just running across country. For example, in Planar Jumpers, not this past Planar Jumpers, but the episode before, when the party arrived in Arborea, Link, who's played by Dangerfield McGee, who's in the chat, she just, sprints off at full speed. And for 6 rounds, she's able to move at 120 feet per round, which means she was covering a vast amount of distance very, very quickly. And that's because she's a tabaxi, which is a cat. So that speed does become important in travel. All right, dark vision. The elf has dark vision. That's important to remember. Usually with anything like that, I'm going to come down here to this big box here that says features and traits. And I'm just going to go ahead and type dark vision, because that's what the character can do. It becomes important, especially if you are traveling in the Underdark where the drow are. All right, next on the list is key senses. That means we got to go back to the character sheet. Proficiency in perception. That means automatically elves get to put that little dot right there in perception. It means they're just better at it than everyone else. And they're going to lord it over you every time they go to make a perception check. That's just how it goes. They have Fey ancestry, so they have advantage saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put them to sleep. Waiting for there we go. Trance. The elves don't even need to sleep. They just go into a trance for about 4 hours, and they wake up being like, all right, cool, I'm ready to go. Ha-la-di-da-di-da. They're great. They get the exact same benefits as if the human fighter that smelly guy in the corner is playing slept for 8 hours. Languages. Obviously, they can do Common and Elvish. Going to add that to the sheet because that's important. Right down here, and other proficiencies in languages. There we go. All right. Give me 1 second here. Got to move screens with this because I can't see it otherwise. All right. So, looking at this, we've got, so far, languages down. Now, subrace. In D&D 5th edition, subrace has now become important. What subrace is there are 3, at least for elves, there are 3 different kind of branches of elves. There's high elves, wood elves, and dark elves. Dark elves being the drow. Now, these elves, subraces, come with different abilities, different things that, help put them ahead on the scale compared to other elves. So, for example, a high elf, which is very magic driven, they get an ability score increase for their intelligence, and it gets pumped up by 1. And they automatically get a cantrip out of the wizard spell list, and it's ruled by intelligence. For a dark elf or a drow, they automatically get an increase to their charisma score. Not because they're pretty, but because they can be super scary anytime they want. So, they get an up to their charisma, which helps with their intimidation checks. They have superior dark vision because they live in the dark all the time. However, they have sensitivity to sunlight, but they have access to drow magic and drow weapon training. However, for the one that we're picking, we're going to go with a wood elf. Now, wood elves have keen senses and intuition, and are fleet, and their fleet feet carry you quickly and stealthily through your native forests. This category includes the wild elves of Greyhawk and the Kaganesti of Dragonlance, as well as the races called Wood Elves in Greyhawk and the Forgotten Realms. When you pick up pre-constructed adventures, you're going to find these names all over the place. Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Neverwinter is a big one. There's even an online game out there that's Neverwinter. It's fun. I've played it. But that increases. So for a Wood Elf, your ability score increase goes to your Wisdom. And with being a Ranger, Wisdom is important because Wisdom goes into your spellcasting. However, we're just going to be level 1. So, I'm going to put this up here so I don't forget. Player name. Obviously, you want to put your name in there just in case anyone finds it. They can hand it back to you. And we are a Wood Elf. Now, for Wisdom, I always do my 3rd highest stat. So my 3rd highest roll, I'm going to test your memories here. So 15. That's why I write them down. Because they never go in there in the same, and in any particular order. So, got a 15. However, we get that +1. So we're popping it to a 16. Alright. Looking at, continuing on, elf weapon training. So now this gives me proficiency with longsword, short bow, and longbow, which becomes important later. Wood elves are fleet of foot. That means they get an extra 5 feet to their speed. So instead of being able to, run for 30 feet and then I'm done, I'm now running for 35 feet and I'm done. I also get Mask of the Wild. And that means I can attempt to hide even when I am only lightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist, or other natural phenomena. So as always, I'm going to write that in here. Mask of the Wild. Speed becomes 35. All right. See, beautiful artwork. Very beautiful artwork. And now we're going on to halflings. So, we're going to pop back up top here to our table of contents, and this is why I use a PDF version. I like the PDF version because I can just type in the number, pop right up to it, and I don't have to sit there and like tab the entire book, and I just carry around my computer instead of carrying around 6 books, because I'm also the DM, so I need the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and a monster manual. And if this was 3.5, I need Monster Manual 1, Monster Manual 2, Player Handbook 1, Player Handbook 2, Dungeon Master Guide 1, Dungeon Master Guide 2, all the fun stuff. So, I put them all on my computer. Adobe Acrobat Reader DC just helps me keep them all like popped up right there along the top, as you can see right up here. And I just boom, 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 done. All right, going to Ranger, which is on page 89 in the book. I'm going to type in 90 just to get us there. All right. So, making this just a little bit bigger here for us. We've got the Ranger. Rough and wild-looking, a human stalks alone through the shadows of trees, hunting the orcs he knows are planning a raid on a nearby farm. Clutching a short sword in each hand, he becomes a whirlwind of steel, cutting down one enemy after another. See, it's just, they've got so many good things on there. Alright, so, Rangers are deadly hunters, they're independent adventurers, so they can do just a little bit of everything. This table right here is the most important part of any character ever. You find this table, you have most of everything you need to know to build your character right then and there without having to kind of read through a ton of stuff. So what this is showing us, at least for 5th edition, is a first level ranger. Right here, first level, is going to have a proficiency bonus of +2. If we pop back over here, we've got proficiency bonus right here. We're going to type +2 right there. Right here, favorite enemy or natural explorer. Those are going to be feats that we automatically get. Now, before I even read them, I'm going to throw them in here because I know that I get them. And I'm going to leave a space between favorite enemy and natural explorer because obviously reading it, you know something else is going to go in there. That's important. Spells known, I've got no spells at first level. Second level I do. So come second level I'm going to need an extra sheet to carry to keep track of my spells because as you can see on this sheet, I unfortunately don't have anywhere to keep track of my spells except in this tiny little box right here called attacks and spellcasting. Not really where I want to keep track of that. There are better pages though. Now your next part, class features. These are important. Your hit dice, 1d10 per ranger level. What that means is every time you level up after first level, take a d10 and you're going to roll it. And you take the number, which I got a 1. Ooh, a 1. And you're going to add your constitution modifier. And that is going to give you how many hit points you gain every level. However, for this one, hit points at first level are 10 plus your constitution modifier. As you can tell, I don't have skill points in here yet. And I definitely don't have the modifiers in here yet. So we're going to hold off on that for a couple minutes. All right, so saving throws. Strength and dexterity. These two are your most important stats as a ranger until you can cast spells, and then wisdom gets added at the end. But that means I need my highest 2 ability scores to be dexterity and strength. So my next highest score I've got is a 16. So that means my elf is going to have a 16 strength. Pretty good, right? I mean, if a normal human is 10, a normal person is 10, that's 6 above 10. That's pretty good. And then skills. Taking a look at skills here. I choose 3, and these 3 are the 3 that I become proficient in. So for these 3, it's going to either be animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, stealth, and survival. That's a small list. And they're all right here. Now I have to really start thinking. Background. What was my character doing that made them so gosh darn great? Thinking about it, let's say my character is 137, and they've only been out and about in the world for the last 5 years. Not great for an adventurer. Like, that means I barely just reached level 1. If you're starting at level 0, there's a lot of people out there, especially when you go back to AD&D folks, that will start them out at level 0. That means you are nothing. You have no class, you have just a race, and that's it. And you have to develop your character, and based off your decisions and how you kind of do things, you then develop your class, and you go from there. So, this character that I'm thinking of right now in my head for this particular occasion has only been going for about 5 years, which means they've barely just gotten out of level 0, just got to level 1. And that means most of their stuff is at home. They were just traveling the forest. So looking back at this sheet, they are definitely good at athletics. They climbed trees as a kid. That's all they ever did is climb trees. They climb trees as an adult because they're in a forest, so they climb trees. Animal handling. Definitely animal handling. And the reason I'm picking this is because they're in a forest, and to find food, they had to kind of get the animal to like them for a second before just dropping it. They're kind of vicious, but it was just easier hunting that way. Looking at this, survival will be my third and final option. Uh, survival, for the past 5 years, they've been out and about on their own, which means they needed to, just survive. They had to hunt their own food, they had to make their own fires, they had to sometimes build their own shelters just to survive in the wild. So, definitely needed those. Needed that survival skill. Now, looking at this, got animal handling, athletics, perception, if you remember, came with automatically being an elf, and survival. All right. Now, I did jump over these a little bit, but that's because we're going to come back to them later. Armor and weapons. They're important. As a ranger, I have access to light armor, medium armor, and shields, weapons, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Now, to kind of help out the newer characters, they do have this section here called equipment, which gives you, you can start with the following equipment. So you can get scale mail or leather armor, pick one. 2 short swords or 2 simple melee weapons, pick one. A dungeoneer's pack or an explorer's pack, and then a longbow and a quiver of 20 arrows. None of those are bad choices. If I was to pick, I would pick leather armor, 2 short swords, an explorer's pack, and obviously I'd get the longbow and a quiver of 20 arrows. But I don't like picking. I don't like being kind of pigeonholed into, saying, that's what I get and that's it. All right. So after you get through this class features, it goes on to tell you the feats that you were given right away level 1, which if you remember were favorite enemy and natural explorer. So favorite enemy reads, beginning at first level, you have significant experience studying, tracking, hunting, and even talking to a certain type of enemy. Choose a type of favorite enemy: aberrations, beasts, celestials, constructs, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, giants, monstrosities, oozes, plants, or undead. Alternatively, you can select 2 races of humanoids, such as gnolls and orcs, as favorite enemies. You have advantage on wisdom or survival checks to track your favorite enemies, as well as on intelligence checks to recall information about them. When you gain this feature, you also learn one language of your choice that is spoken by your favorite enemies, if they speak one at all. You choose one additional favorite enemy and as well as an associated language as you level up to 6th and 14th level. So, as you gain levels, your choices should reflect the types of monsters you have encountered on your adventures. So, right now, thinking of our character here, they ended up going out about, like I said, 5 years ago. But they went out of their village because it was attacked by a band of orcs. And these orcs killed everyone except for, 4 or 5 people because they were out hunting, one of which was our character. And our character, when he or she came back to the village, saw, the destruction, the just terrible things that the orcs had done to the entire village, including their family and friends. And so our character ends up going out and hunts down every single orc that they can find. And so orc becomes our favorite enemy. So, we've got our favorite enemy. Natural Explorer, you're definitely going to want to read any feats that you get just to make sure you know what you're doing. So, Natural Explorer, you are particularly familiar with one type of natural environment and are adept at traveling and surviving in such regions. Choose one type of favored terrain: Arctic, coast, desert, forest, grassland, mountain, swamp, or the Underdark. When you make an intelligence or wisdom check related to your favored terrain, your proficiency bonus is doubled if you are using a skill that you're proficient in. So, while traveling for an hour or more in your favorite terrain, you gain the following benefits. Difficult terrain does not slow your group's travel. Your group can't become lost except by magical means. Even when you are engaged in another activity while traveling, such as foraging, navigating, or tracking, you remain alert to danger. That's important. If you are traveling alone, you can move stealthily at a normal pace. When you forage, you find twice as much food as you normally would. While tracking other creatures, you also learn their exact number, their sizes, and how long ago they passed through the area. You can choose an additional favored terrain types at 6th level and 10th level, and obviously these should be based off of the campaign you're in. So, for our character, he's been living in the woods for so long that he's gonna end up being a forest dude. So what elf? He's been living in the trees. Alright. For the rest of this, I'm gonna leave it alone, because we don't need it, because we're not 2nd level. Going down here. Don't need archetypes yet. Alright. Hey, rogues. That's just a cool picture right there. I just love that picture. Alright. Now we're going to pop back up to the table of contents. However, before we do that, we're going to come back over here and we're going to take a look at our stats. So we've kind of got our stats written out. Everything we need to know. Except we haven't filled in Constitution, Intelligence, or Charisma. We still have 3 stats left on our sheet. Personally, my rangers need to be hardy. They're eventually going to have to go in close quarters combat, and they've got to be able to take on people. So I'm going to drop our last... Oh, nope, not a 16. Forgot to cross that one off. That's a 14 in there. And, you know, intelligence-wise, they don't need to be the smartest people ever to get this done. But, you know, they need to, you know, they just gotta have a little bit of intelligence. So we're going to throw that 13 there. And finally, Charisma gets our last 14. That takes care of all of our stats. Elves are pretty. That's why I put Charisma at 14 instead of 13. Elves are pretty. He's got to be able to talk to people sometimes. All right. Now, there's these little dots here, and as some of you know, these little dots are where the modifiers go. Some people like to flip it, and they actually put their scores in the opposite way, so they'd put like 16 down in this little hole, and they'd put their modifier up top. Either way, you can do it however you want. I don't like doing that because I like the ability score to be front and center. Now, where to find that is, it's going to be right at the beginning. At least it is in the 3.5 book. And there it is. Ability scores and modifiers. So as you can tell, people who have a 10 or 11 have 0 modifier. That means they're average. For us, our lowest one is 13. So 13 gets a +1. Now, quick way to remember this is it goes even, odd, up, even, odd, up, even, odd, up. So for example, 10, 11 is 0. 12, 13, 1. That even, odd went up. So, going next to our 14s, they get a +2. Because it's even, odd, up. So 14, 15 would be a 2, so 16 will be a 3. And then 19, if I remember correctly, is still just a 4. Yep. All right. That means those need to go over in here for saving throws. Strength and dexterity is what, as a ranger, we are proficient in. So that means you get to add your proficiency bonus right here of +2 to that. So you're going to go +5 for strength, +6 for dexterity, and everything else is just the standard modifier. +3 and +2. Now, dropping down here, I personally don't ever fill out something that I'm not proficient in because I'm not adding any bonuses to it. I'm just taking it at that base modifier. But if I'm proficient in it, I want to add to that. So my wisdom's a +3, which is animal handling. If you look right here, it says whiz. That's wisdom. And that's your wisdom modifier. So I've got +5 there. I've got +5 there for strength. Going down here, another +5. Going down here, another +5. Looking up this list, everything else is just going to be your standard base modifier. So for instance, stealth is going to be just that +4. Arcana is just going to be +1, stuff like that. So this is important when you're developing characters because it definitely gets you to where you need to be. All right, so looking at our character sheet, this is what we've got done so far. We've got our class and level, we've got our race, our alignment, speed, all of our stats are done, which is good. We've got our saving throws figured out, our skills are picked so far, we've got our languages, and we've got some feats and traits, which is pretty good. We've got a good start. Now, jumping back up to our table of contents, that throws us down here to personality and background. This is something that is completely new with 5th edition, and it's something that I don't necessarily agree with, but I see why people like it, and so I'm accepting it, and I'm kind of just, taking it on, trying to make it my own, trying to get through it. So we're going to drop down to page 121, which is 122 on our PDF, personality and background. So as always, you need to give your character details: name, sex, height and weight, other physical characteristics, the alignment. This is where alignment is talked about, which I kind of already talked about those. Going down to languages, these are languages. So I picked Orc, if you remember, as the natural or the favorite enemy. That means I also get to learn a language that they speak, and so orcs speak Orc. So I have hunted Orc enough that I've learned some of their language, enough to communicate. So I gotta add Orc to the languages. Popping back over, there are exotic languages. So say our Wood Elf's village was attacked by demons, and the demons just kind of came out of nowhere and just ripped everyone to shreds. And demons were my favorite enemy. I'd get to learn Abyssal. The only way these are sometimes learned is through very specific interactions or very good backstories. Now, to let you know, as a DM, if you give me an amazing backstory that gives you a reason to have all of these extra things, I will most likely say yes to these extra things. I think the backstory for a character is very important, and we've already started developing a backstory. Going to personal characteristics, you got personal traits. Here we go. What D&D 5th edition added were these personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. So, personality traits. You're supposed to give your character 2 personality traits. Personality traits are small, simple ways to help you set your character apart from every other character. Your personality traits should tell you something interesting and fun about your character. They should be self-descriptions that are specific about what makes your character stand out. I'm smart is not a good trait, because it describes a lot of characters. I've read every book in Candlekeep. It tells you something specific about your character's interests and dispositions. Personality traits might describe the things your characters like, past accomplishments, things your character dislikes or fears, character's self-attitude or mannerisms, or the influence of their ability scores. Useful place to start thinking about personality traits is to look at your highest and lowest ability scores and define one trait related to either. Either one could be a positive or negative. You might work hard to overcome a low score, for example, or be cocky about your high score. For us, our highest trait is going to be dexterity, and intelligence will be our lowest trait. We're great on our feet, but we don't think very well sometimes. Popping up back here, we've got ideals, bonds, and flaws. Ideals, you're going to describe one ideal that drives your character. Your ideals are the things that you believe in most strongly, so the fundamental moral and ethical principles that compel you to act as you do. Ideals encompass everything from your life goals to your core belief system. Bonds, you're going to create one bond for your character. Bonds represent a character's connection to people, places, and events in the world. They tie you to things from your background. They might inspire you to heights of heroism or lead you to act against your own best interests if they are threatened. They can work very much like ideals, driving a character's motivations and goals. And then we've got flaws, and you're going to choose one flaw for your character. Your character's flaw represents some vice, compulsion, fear, or weakness, in particular anything that someone else could exploit to bring you to ruin or cause you to act against your best interests. More significant than negative personality traits, a flaw might answer any of these questions. What enrages you? What's the one person, concept, or event that you are terrified of? What are your vices? Aspire. What do you mean by that? Like, what your character aspires to be are the ideals? Because it's definitely along those lines. For these, I always end up going to backgrounds. So for backgrounds, they give you several different choices that automatically give you personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, kind of just right in them. And they also give you specific proficiencies, maybe some specific languages, suggested equipment, suggested characteristics, and you can customize them just about any way you want if your DM allows it. So jumping down here, I'm going to make this page just a little bit smaller so I can scroll a little faster. There's several to choose from. One of them is the Acolyte, which the Acolyte is, you've been in service for the temple, to a specific god or pantheon of gods, stuff like that. Not really our character. Charlatan, you have always had a way with people. You know what makes them tick. Not so much. Thinking about our character, what we've kind of decided on. You are an experienced criminal with a history of breaking the law. Not so much. Entertainer, you thrive in front of an audience. I mean, that describes me, but not necessarily the character. So we're going to keep moving on. Folk hero. You come from a humble social rank, but you are destined for so much more. Already the people of your home village regard you as their champion, and your destiny calls you to stand against the tyrants and monsters that threaten the common folk everywhere. This could be possibly one of the options that you could pick for this character. Guild artisan, you're good at crafting stuff. Not so much us. A hermit, we lived in seclusion in that forest for a long time, but we were surrounded by other people, so we definitely have better, social skills than a hermit would. I guess either in a sheltered community such as a monastery or entirely alone for a formative part of your life. So hermit could be an option. So we got folk hero and hermit we can pick from. Noble, nope. Outlander, possibly an outlander, grew up in the wilds, far from civilization and the comforts of town and technology. You've witnessed the migration of herds larger than forests, survived weather more extreme than any city dweller could comprehend, and enjoyed the solitude of being the only thinking creature for miles in any direction. The wilds are in your blood, whether you were a nomad, an explorer, a recluse, a hunter-gatherer, or even a marauder. Even in places where you don't know the specific features of the terrain, you know the ways of the wild. It's possible. That'd be a really good one to pick from for our character. Scrolling down here, Sage. Yeah, we definitely haven't learned the lore of the multiverse. Keeping going. Sailor. Nope, we didn't go on the water. Soldier. We never trained really as a soldier. An urchin. We didn't grow up on streets alone, and that's it. So, thinking of it, we picked out a couple. We've got Outlander, Hermit, and Folk Hero. This is when you need to dive in and go, which one is going to complement your character the best? Because each of them could somehow fit your character. So looking at Hermit, you've got this is where you need to go to skill proficiencies and tool proficiencies, languages, and equipment. So for this one, skill proficiencies are medicine and religion. Medicine and religion are two skills that we are not currently proficient in on our character sheet. So Hermit might be a good option. Going back even further, we've got Folk Hero, which skill proficiencies are animal handling and survival. Well, kind of already have animal handling and survival on there. And then looking at Outlander, athletics and survival. Well, we've got athletics and survival. I think the Hermit will be the way for us to go. That gives us kind of the best options for our character to expand and, be more useful in a party. So skill proficiencies, we're going to be adding medicine and religion, which religion then becomes a +3, and medicine becomes a +5. All right, so looking here, we get an extra language of our choice, which we can pick later. Equipment, we automatically get a scroll case stuffed full of notes from our studies or prayers, a winter blanket, a set of common clothes, an herbalism kit, and 5 gold pieces. That's if we want to take that. I still like buying my own equipment, so we're just going to kind of skip over that. But if you don't want to have to try to, go through all of that and you just want to make a quick character, not a bad choice to pick. So, life of seclusion. What was the reason for your isolation, and what changed to allow you to end your solitude? Hey, what's up, Sedated Friar? You can work with your DM to determine the exact nature of your seclusion. I'm the DM. I'm just going to pick one from this list. We've got 8 choices here. Searching for spiritual enlightenment, partaking of communal living, exiled for a crime, retreated from society after a life-altering event, needed a quiet place to work, needed to commune with nature, I was a caretaker. Retreated from society, definitely, is kind of what we kind of set up for our character background. So, feature discovery. So this is a new feat that your character gets. The quiet seclusion of your extended hermitage gave you access to a unique and powerful discovery. The exact nature of this revelation depends on the nature of your seclusion. It might be a great truth about the cosmos, the deities, the powerful beings of the outer planes, or the forces of nature. It could be a sight that no one else has ever seen. You might have uncovered a fact that has long been forgotten, or unearthed some relic of the past that could rewrite history. It might be information that would be damaging to the people who or consigned you to exile, and hence the reason for your return to society. Work with your DM to determine the details of your discovery and its impact on the campaign. Something to think of. Feature discovery for this character. Orcs aren't just all barbarians. There's actually a cult of orcs that love knowledge and decide they just want to gather and collect books so they can read them and just gather all of the world's knowledge. That is a discovery. Going down to personality traits, you can roll or you can pick. I usually pick. And I'm going to throw, I like this one. I am utterly serene even in the face of disaster. And you're just going to come up here and you're going to write that in. And write that in there. Then you're going to go back and pick another one. I like this one right here. I feel tremendous empathy for all who suffer. You've had a big disaster in your life. Might as well, is the power to sing and like hypnotize things with song. That's a bard. We're doing a ranger. I mean, a bard a bard has the power to, you know, all of their stuff is done with song, so all of their spells, whatnot. Uh, so looking at that, a bard would be able to sing and hypnotize things with song. However, this being a ranger, the not so much. Um, I feel empathy for all who suffer. Cool. So there's our personality traits. Popping back over, we're going to drop down to ideals. So these ideals are kind of broken up into, you know, they have kind of a starting phrase. So greater good, logic, free thinking, power, live and let live, self knowledge. And behind them, they have part of the alignment spectrum. So, for example, greater good is my gifts are meant to be shared with all, not used for my own benefit. Behind it, it says good. It's a possibility. We're running a chaotic good. And I think our character would definitely go off with this free thinking. Inquiry and curiosity are the pillars of progress. So we're just going to go over here, pop that in. Free thinking, inquiry, and curiosity are the pillars of, what was that last word? Progress. I just about put pillars of society, which would be nice. It would be so nice if those were the pillars of society. Dropping over to bonds. So this is how you're connected to the world. Nothing is more important than the other members of my hermitage, order, or association. I entered seclusion to hide from the ones who might still be hunting me. I'm still seeking the enlightenment I pursued. I entered seclusion because I loved someone I could not have. Should my discovery come to light, I could bring ruin to the world. My isolation gave me great insight into a great evil that only I can destroy. I'm going to go with nothing is more important than the other members of my hermitage, order, or association. So these are the people, like I said, there were some people that survived. And along with our character, they went out to hunt orcs as well. However, our character is the only one that kind of found that, like, place where the orcs, have their secret library. So nothing is more important than the other members of my hermitage. All right. Finally, drop into flaws. So this is where the character can get fun. I have had people before in different groups ask if they can take more than one flaw to get an extra feat. And every time they ask, I always say yes. But they have to be able to play that flaw. And if they can't play that flaw, then they can't use the feat. So, looking at these 6 flaws here, now that I've returned to the world, I enjoy its delights a little too much. I harbor dark, bloodthirsty thoughts that my isolation and meditation failed to quell. I am dogmatic in my thoughts and philosophy. I let my need to win arguments overshadow friendships and harmony. I'd risk too much to uncover a lost bit of knowledge. I like keeping secrets and won't share them with anyone. We've got a couple good ones here. I definitely I harbor dark, bloodthirsty thoughts that my isolation and meditation failed to quell. Because character went out into the world and hunted down every orc they could possibly find. And it didn't satisfy them. They left the library untouched. Maybe that's what's eating at their mind. Those are orcs in that library. They got to go kill the orcs. I also like keeping secrets and won't share them with anyone. That one, maybe they don't want to divulge information on their background. I think I'm gonna go with the I harbor dark and bloodthirsty thoughts though. That's a pretty good one, and it fits really well with our character backstory that we've kind of developed so far. Bloodthirsty. Harbored dark, bloodthirsty thoughts. That my isolation and meditation did not quell. All right. So, now we've got that done. We're going to pop back up to our table of contents here. Looking down, we've got our personality and background done. So next is going to be equipment. And this is where things get fun for people that just like buying things. Especially people that like looking at goats. You know who I'm talking to. M16. If you're wondering about that joke, go check it out on YouTube, Critical Miss TV. It'll be the 3rd episode, Planar Jumpers Wait. All right, so jumping down to equipment. So, this is where it gets important. As a DM, I always like my player characters to just buy their own stuff. So, looking down here, for a ranger, you're going to need 5d4, and you're going to multiply it by 10. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I know I've got one more kind of hidden over here. 5. There we go. So I'm going to roll these 5. Let's see what I get here. 2, 4, 6, 10, 13. So I've got 130 gold at my disposal. I'm going to write that down over here on my just piece of paper. You can also go down here and write that right here. Got 130 gold you can spend. Exchange rates become important later on when you're playing. Now we're going to drop down here to armor. So this is the table that you're going to want to look for. This table has all of the different types of armor that your character can just buy right off the bat, and you can find these in most like armor stores, armories, whatever that's called. Yeah. Armor sellers, blacksmiths, whatnot. They're going to have most of these available when you're in a game. They might have some select pieces that are more available than others, such as like a chain shirt. Might have more of that. Scale mail, that might be pretty commonplace in some of those places. For our character, I like having studded leather armor. Because this really helps our character kind of take a beating. So it's going to cost 45 gold. So I'm going to write that down here. 130 minus 45. I'm terrible at math. 130 minus 45 is 85. So I've got 85 gold left. I'm going to pop back over here to the character sheet. And I'm going to write studded leather armor. Drop that to 85. All right. So this next part right here, we got the cost down. Armor class. This is how much it takes to hit you. So it's 12 plus dexterity modifier. If we scroll up here, we've got dexterity modifier of +4. So we've got someone has to roll 16 on their 20-sided die to hit us. And that failed. That was a critical miss. All right. It weighs 13 pounds, which for some DMs, they don't care about weight. I believe as long as you're not trying to pick up every little thing in sight, your weight isn't going to go up all that much. But I'm going to write that there just so for future reference, we know how much it weighs. All right, that takes care of armor. That was easy. Weapons. Yay, weapons. I get to kill things now, right? Scrolling down. Here we are. Here's a table that we're looking for. This is not the full table. This is just part of it. It does go on to the next page. Oh, nope, that's adventuring gear. So it doesn't go on to the next page. I lied. But for our character, we have proficiency in martial weapons, which means we have access. We have proficiency in simple and martial, which means we have access to this entire sheet, and we can buy anything we want off of it. Now, as an adventurer, I always like to have a dagger in my back pocket, just in case I lose my weapon. So I'm going to pick up a dagger, and that dagger is going to cost me 2 gold. The dagger's obviously not my main weapon, but I'm going to put it up in my weapons anyways, and I'm going to put it right down here on the third one. Attack bonus. So, attack bonus is going to be the modifier that's used for it, and if you're proficient in it, so it's going to add those two together. So attack bonus for the dagger is +3, +2, so +5. And not 54, just 5. Damage and type, it's going to do 1d4 piercing. And I just shorten it up to 1d4p. Sounds really dirty. All right. Now scrolling down, martial melee weapons. Thinking about my character, he had, a little bit of training, let's say, just playing with friends mostly. So he ended up, finding a long sword in the village that he picked up and wanted to use. And I'm going to shorten that because it's not wanting me to put the whole thing in there, so I'm just going to put L sword. And he, picked it up, ran off, and tried to kill some orcs. It's got 1d8 slashing, but it is also versatile, so it can go up to 1d10. So 1d8 slash 1d... and I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to remember, as the player, that it is versatile, so if I put 2 hands on it, it's going to slash with more power. Now, my character has the ability to pick up a short sword, but he doesn't, because 1 sword for him is enough. However, he does pick up his trusty longbow. And his trusty longbow is going to do 1d8 piercing. So we've got longbow. This one is going to have slightly different modifier because our dexterity is better. So it's going to get +6 to attack bonus. And it's going to do 1d8p. Now if we go back and take a look here, we have currently spent 65 that I haven't accounted for. And so 85 minus 65 is going to be 20. Or nope, that's 83. Correction. 18, because I can't do math. All right. I'm going to get rid of dagger here. Doesn't really matter there. That leaves us 18 gold to figure out the rest of our equipment, which for some people that's really light. However, our character is very good at survival. And so he is able to kind of hunt down his prey, and he's able to, feed himself off of deer, rabbits, and whatnot. So he doesn't necessarily need road rations. However, he's going to need some ammunition, so he's going to need some arrows. And he's only going to get a pack of 20. And that 20, I'm actually going to throw up here as well. So I remember I have 20 arrows, and that's only going to cost me 1 gold. Drop that to 17. All right. Looking down even further, I'm gonna make sure my character has a backpack. A backpack is important because it helps carry more items. It just makes more sense to have a backpack for random stuff. And so get my cursor there, backpack, and that's gonna cost 2 gold, so now down to 15. And bedroll, Don't really need one of those because I'm an elf. Let's see here. Let's keep taking a look. Do. There's probably a lot of things that I could buy for this character, but for the sake of time, I'm just gonna kind of skip over a lot of this. And think about it this way: there are kits later on that become important. These tool kits right here. So for us, one thing we might want to take a look at is an herbalism kit. That way we can use it to, do medicines and whatnot. And maybe possibly we want to pick up like I don't know, some type of like a dungeoneering kit, something like that to, explorer's pack, help us kind of get through things. All right, popping back up to our table of contents. We're getting close to almost done. I think we just kind of have to fill out everything else. So going back here, taking a look. Initiative is going to run off of your dexterity modifier, so you're going to get a +4 there. Our current hit points, now that we have a constitution modifier, our hit die is a D10, and we only have one of them. And so that gives us hit points of 12, because it is your hit dice plus your constitution modifier. Your passive wisdom is just, or your passive perception is without your proficiency. So you're looking at 10 plus your modifier of wisdom, so we've got 13. All right. Inspiration only comes about when you're given it. If you're not given inspiration, don't worry about it. If you're given inspiration, your DM will let you know. Looking down the sheet, everything looks like it's good to go. So that is kind of how you make a character. And I am so beautiful because I take a shower every day. Take a shower, nerds. Take a shower. It all comes full circle. I'm just going to make fun of nerds because I am one and I have that ability. All right. Last minute, any questions before we're going to go off and raid some people? Do we have any questions? Besides why I'm so beautiful. I apologize for being so beautiful. I can't help it. It's just my nature, I stand at work all the time and I just stand there looking beautiful. My display froze up on me. Give me a second here. Here we go. All right. Any last minute questions? Maybe. Going once. Possibly going twice. All right. All right. Since all I got was the "Why are you so beautiful?" Honestly, I can't help it. It's just who I am. Love you. We're gonna pop over and we're gonna raid some people. So give me a second here. All right, there it is. Haha. Hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the master's class. I did. It was fun. Glad some of you could show up and hang out with me today. So, give me a second here, and I'm going to find someone else for us to raid. All right. Since we've been talking about Dungeons and Dragons, let's see who's playing Dungeons and Dragons right now. Probably some good channels on. I left one earlier. They did a really good job. They had some really good voice acting. It was pretty good. Like I was not upset at all by what I watched. Let's see here. Let's see what you've got going on, Twitch. All right. Here's what's going to happen. I think I found who we're going to raid. They look like they're having fun. Let's see here. Let's see. How do I do this? Anyone tell me how? This is the first time I've actually ever raided someone. How do I raid? Let's see here. All right. Also, just so you guys know, coming up later, we do have Sedated Friar. He's going to be hopping on and playing a game. I'm not exactly sure which one right off the bat, but it's definitely one you should be checking out. He's going to be good at it, I hope. Also, if you have any other further questions, feel free to go ahead and shoot us an email at criticalmisstv@gmail.com. It's all one word. I can answer any questions you have. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Type in Critical Miss TV. You're going to find us just about every time. Facebook, you got to put spaces in them. Otherwise, everything else, no spaces. Thanks for, hanging out with me today. Definitely gonna raid this group right here. It seems like they're having some fun. Looks like they might enjoy a raid. All right. Thanks for stopping in. Hope you enjoy who's coming up next. See ya.